Robert Plank Show episode 172, Tandem Leadership. Communicate with partners and employees to grow your business with Gina Catalano. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show. We're here today with Gina Catalano, and she's the founder of Venture Solutions, a consulting and coaching company focused on the success of small companies and their leaders. With over 20 years of experience leading and working with businesses, she has authored the book, the Amazon Kindle bestseller, Tandem Leadership, How Your Number Two Can Make You Number One. In this book, she outlines an innovative strategy for entrepreneurs to work with the number two or second in command leader in their company to achieve the success in all areas of their life. So Gina, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks, Robert.
I am glad that you are here. So I guess we're talking about leadership and dealing, like, if you're the number one and dealing with the number two. Is that right?
Yeah, or how you work with anybody that you have a strategic partnership with, even if it's not, you don't, you're a solo entrepreneur and you have either joint ventures or a virtual assistant or a partner. I mean, what are the things that make that successful?
Okay, and I mean, and yeah, like I think that we all deal with that. Like, I mean, I have a business partner who is my equal, and we deal with joint venture partners and stuff. And I don't know, like, to be honest, like, for at least for me, like there was a phase of some kind of growing pains where sometimes I would feel like maybe I was pulling more of my own weight than the other person, or maybe I felt like I was kind of letting the other person down. So do you see that kind of thing happening, or maybe there's some kind of an imbalance one way or the other?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that happens because, especially like in the beginning, especially in the entrepreneurial realm, I think we really pride ourselves a lot of the time on being able to do everything and to be everything to everyone, and it's a kind of a badge of honor, to being able to do all those things. And for most entrepreneurs, it's something a lot of them like it. I know I do, and like the variety in what they're doing. And I think what happens eventually is when you're working with other people, I mean, there's might be conflict, but we sometimes think that we can do some things better than other people that maybe other people can do better than us. And that creates some stress. I don't know if that was an issue with you when you were starting to work with other people.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much an issue I have with literally everyone I've ever come into contact with. With their, yeah, I mean I could totally relate to like the ego, workaholic, control freak. If I have someone else, if I tell someone else to do something or ask them to do something, and it comes back, and maybe it comes back, and I think, well, that's not the way I would have done it, or I would have done it faster. So I mean, is there a quick answer for that side of it?
Yeah, because I think at some point, it's super interesting. $100,000 a year is kind of one of those interesting marks that people get over for revenue. And while, I mean, I don't have the stats right in front of me, but there's a huge number of solo practitioners in our country, probably around the world, that make under 100,000. But once you get over that $100,000 mark, the number of businesses that only have one person in them is really small. So depending on what your growth ideas, what you want to do, the ability to work with other people is really important. So I always say, understand, start with the person, and understand what you do best, and really ask yourself these questions. What do I like to do? What do I have to do? And is there other people that could do this for me that's maybe I can pay less money? Or are they better at it than I am? And in the end, they would maybe pass me at doing that.
And that seems like kind of we kind of have to set our ego aside and take that inventory, it sounds like.
Yeah, and I think the ego is an interesting thing. I think that it can help, make when you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to hit a deadline. It can be great telling you that you can keep going, but it also can mask. It also tells us that we're doing things better than we're not. And so understanding that some of the things that make our ego keep us going is great in the short term, but it won't serve us in the long term. And if you're ultimately about serving your customer, and that's where I always try to bring it back to, a lot of times we come back to saying, I'm not giving everything to my customer because I'm too busy doing stacking papers. I mean, I'll use a dumb example, or I'm, doing something that I could automate, which is something that I know you work on with when you help your customers and your clients.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is, and I think that that recently I've in the last few years, like I've kind of gotten over that, not like the entire way, but a little bit, where like I split the revenue 50-50 with my business partner, and we now hire someone to jump in on the help desk. But it took a long while to get over. So I mean, like a few minutes ago, you were saying that so a lot of businesses, once they get past that $100,000 mark, if they remain just a one person business, then that's really going to slow their growth. So I mean, what does someone do, or how does someone get over that mindset of, okay, well, now if I'm at 100 grand, or if I'm at 120 or 150 grand, and if I bring someone on, now I'm back down to 50 grand, now I'm back into 75 grand, because now I have to split the money. So I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and I think what I like to think about it as is that this is an old adage, but if you ever had a goldfish as a kid,
Oh yeah.
if you ever put a goldfish in a small bowl, it will stay to the size of the bowl. If you make the tank bigger, the goldfish will grow. And I think of the goldfish a lot. And if you've ever seen a carp, if you've ever seen how big a carp is, they're huge. And they're, in carp ponds or in the ocean. And so think of yourself trying to grow yourself is that you want to be in a bigger environment. You want to have a bigger goal. So if you know you want to go to say $500,000, for example, and you're at 150 and you virtually do not want to work any more hours, because that's one of the reasons that we become business people, our entrepreneurs, because we're tired of working for somebody and we want to be able to control what we want to have control. So the idea is think of that bowl getting bigger and then figure out what are the things that you can do that really aren't your secret sauce. There aren't the things that somebody's going to pay you the big ticket dollar to do. And quite frankly, when I start working with people, there's a lot of things that they're doing that somebody else could do. So say you want to grow your business by 50,000. So can you afford to invest 25,000 to get to that 50,000? I mean, and that's where you start looking at, and everybody has their thresholds, and that's how you start working through some of those issues. And some of it's just what we are stuck in our brain, that we have these myths that we need to break.
Okay, and then yeah, so what I'm hearing from you is that just to kind of put that back into like the numbers we were making up. So if someone gets to say 100 grand and they say, well, I want to get to 500, then maybe they'll have to take a little bit of a dip for now to bring on some other person or some other people in the team, but in the long term, because they won't get burned out, because they'll have more time freed up, because more stuff will get done, then that will continue to increase. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it. And I think too, it also allows you to freeze you up to do some things, to work on some bigger ticket items that maybe you don't have time to work on. That will yield you that 20. Maybe you can currently get $5,000 for doing something. Now maybe you can get a $30,000 ticket, and that's what you want to look at. And you have to give up $2,000 of that to have somebody else work on that with you.
So it's more of like a long term thing, so you can get out of the putting out of fires mode. And so you have your Tandem Leadership book, and I'm looking at it right now at tandemleadershipbook.com, and I'm looking at some of the bullet points and things. And one thing that really sticks out for me is where they say, why your second in command or your partner should be a complement to your talents and skills, and not your clone or your opposite. And what that makes me think of is, like for a long time, I thought that it had to be just me, and I had that kind of selfish mindset, and I thought that I can do everything, and if I have a business partner or I have someone on, then that might mean that I'm weak, or I'm shy, or I have these flaws or whatever. But then I got over that part, and then I partnered with someone for a few years who was kind of, I don't know, like lazy or a flake, just to use some harsh language, right? And I felt like I was always kind of like just trying to motivate him to do some stuff, and that worked for a while, but that kind of fell apart. And then I partnered up with someone who did a lot of stuff on his own, right? So we would agree on some stuff. We would work on a project, and I'd do my part and go and see what he was doing. and then it turns out that he was doing like five other things on his own, and that kind of ran its course too. But that was like a pretty good partnership. And then the business partner I'm with now, I'm always thinking about this. Like I was like, well, how does he relate to me? And so like I'm a computer programmer. Like I do the coding side of our business because that's fun for me, and he does like the, I don't know what you'd call it, like the setting up of servers and like maintaining stuff. That and like the getting the traffic. That's his fun part. And I was thinking maybe just like a week or so ago that what I guess the way that our skills or our personalities fit together is he's the person who does the experimenting and the dabbling and kind of figures out the path for us, and not to the extreme where he's off doing other projects, but he's like the problem solver, right? He'll figure out how to get something working, and then I'll be the one to expand it and make it all crazy. And so I mean, have you seen things like that, like as far as the how the skills and talents of people kind of fit together like that?
Absolutely. And I think what you sounds like what you and your partner have stumbled upon is awesome and is a little bit of magic too, especially in partnerships. And that's why I think the model can work either if it's an employee and a supervisor relationship, or in a partnership relationship, because what it really focuses on, you said two things that I thought were just awesome. You said the things that I'm good at and the things that I like to do. And those two things are what makes it so that a Monday morning isn't a Monday morning for you, right? I mean, those are the
Right.
things that you like doing. And when you can find that, I think it's great. A lot of people want partners because they think it'll share, and maybe I'd be curious to know what your experience has been, but a lot of people say they want a partner because they want someone to share the burden of the relationship, of the business with. And the good things, but the hard things a lot of times. But partnerships don't work out a lot of times because of the things that you found out in your earlier ones. It's just not a good values fit, and you're not complementary to each other in a way that's super rewarding for both of you. And I think what I'm trying to get with business leaders when they need to, not everybody can have a partnership. And so what I work with companies that need to have more than one person in them. And what I found is if that as a leader or an owner, if you can find someone that does that same thing, that they get just as big a kick out of the things that you don't like to do or you aren't good at, all of a sudden the burden feels relieved because you're not worrying about things that you don't like to do.
Interesting. Yeah, and that's making a lot of sense here. And to answer your question, yeah, like I've come across a lot of people who say something like, "Well, I'll bring the idea and you can do all the work and we'll split the money 50-50," or maybe that's, or sometimes that's kind of what they think, and I've been baited and switched a little bit, where it started off as, I had a certain set of tasks and they had a certain set of tasks, and then after a while I kind of felt like we were almost playing a game of chicken, like who could do the least amount of work, and so that wasn't healthy either. So I mean, is that just the secret for someone who's trying to like bring more people into their business, and they're trying to figure out like how the skills and personalities can fit together? I mean, is it just a matter of listing the things that they do and then sort of setting aside what they're good at and they enjoy, and then what's left over is what the other person should do? I mean, would that be a good way of
Yeah,
figuring that out?
that's one way to think about it. I think at the top of the whole pyramid, which I think you probably found out, is the value system. I've always really, for me personally, liked working with and for people that worked as hard as I did. And so that's regardless of what your skill sets are. I mean, so the values have to match. What I typically do is have somebody track their tasks for as long as I can get an entrepreneur to do that, over a course of even a couple of days. And what we've typically found is that people don't even realize some of the stuff that they're doing. And that came out of my old consulting days when we would do continuous improvement in manufacturing plants, and people would track, or we'd do videotaping of their work out in the factory. And they would look at it like, oh my gosh, I never realized I did that. We are such creatures of habit, I mean, humans, that there's so many things that we do that we don't even realize that we're doing, that takes away from our time. And one of the number one things I hear from entrepreneurs is, I don't have enough time. And typically it's not that you don't have enough time, is that you don't realize what you're wasting your time on.
Interesting. So to figure that out, to figure out those time wasting tasks, I mean, what would someone do? Like, what would someone be writing down like during the day? Like, for example, like so if I was sitting in my computer, would I go like, okay, like 8:20 a.m. check my email, 9 o'clock a.m. answer customer support. Like would I track? I mean, like, am I looking for like five things in a day or 10 things in a day? Am I tracking the amount of time I do for each task? What am I writing down here?
I like to make it as simple as possible. When I work with folks like you that are in the online realm, they like to develop a big thing to do it. But I typically just say, put a piece of paper down there and don't even have any value, no value judgment on anything, right? Because you just start and you just write as you switch tasks. You just switch and you do as much as you can do. I mean, because you don't want to be so crazy about it, like at the micro. But if you can track it in half-hour increments, I think that typically will, I mean, better, more is better, but if you can do it in half an hour increments, because typically what you'll find, the checking email is a great example. People are, they're, people are letting their business or their computer or their screen time or their phone run them as opposed to them running their business. And we don't even realize how often we're doing it.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think yeah, like I mean, I'm no stranger to that. Like I for sure fall into that. Like I'll stop being aware of how much I check, email or my phone or Facebook until, weeks will go by and I'm thinking, oh man, I haven't put my phone down in so long. I kind of need to reset. And so along those lines, along the lines of kind of getting out of the pattern of being a habitual checker of all this stuff, like is there a secret to not having to monitor the new person that you bring on, or is that just a matter of the trust building up?
I think the couple things. One of the values of doing that first exercise is when we go through the list and we start crafting what really makes you do your thing great and what you really need support in, is it basically starts becoming a job description. And it doesn't have to be or a project description or whatever you want to call it. And then once we do that, then we develop a plan to train someone to it, because these are the two things that I always find out that happens. It's with entrepreneurs, it's at either end of the spectrum. Either A, they want to micromanage the person to death, or B, they want to just throw it over the wall and expect that they get the result that they want. It's never in the middle. I have to tell you, it never is. And so if you want to hire someone or work with someone that has the same amount of passion and interest in what they're supposed to do for you, you have to give them your expectations about what you want to have happen at the other side. And you have to be able to have accountability and you have to follow up. And however that works for you and for them, you got to figure that out at the beginning.
And is there a certain stage of growing pains when figuring all that stuff out?
Um, I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I think typically it does take practice. And the thing that I suggest to everybody is in the beginning, just set up regular expectations and meeting times or check-in times. It doesn't have to be a meeting necessarily, but check-in times. Because once you do that regularly, then it becomes, you're not making a decision about it. You're expecting you get a progress report if it's every day, if it's once a week, if it's once a month, if it's 4 times a day. That way, everybody understands what the expectation is, and you're not spending a lot of time managing. If that person can't do your minimum expectation, then you already know you have an issue before you even go down the path.
Okay, and yeah, and that sort of answers my question. And just what I'm kind of imagining in my head is, so if someone says, okay, like I know I'm at the point where something needs to change, I have these skills, here's what I do during the day, and then here's this job or project description where I can hire someone out. And so I guess what I'm asking is there a period of time, like a 2 weeks or 3 week period, when there's all these meetings when you're just trying to get a feel for the person as far as like their work ethic, or how often that you need to check in with them. So like if you have them be accountable to you 4 times a day, maybe over time does that get dialed back or does that get adjusted in any way?
Yeah, I think so. And I don't recommend not ever checking in with the person because I think that that's not good. But I typically I what I've seen is that people get into a rhythm and a routine, and it's when they stop there's some sort of minimum routine they need to get to. If they stop it, that's when they run into problems. So, say at the beginning you're looking for daily check-ins from somebody, and then you can move it to a week. A month, a lot of times, isn't going to work for most things. It's hard to do big generalization, but you do still have to have some sort of rhythm. Because what I've found is we as entrepreneurs expect someone to keep doing things even without any more feedback, and they're looking for feedback because they want to help you achieve the results you're looking for.
Right. And I think that when thinking about just the like that sort of aspect of it, like, how, like, are they on track, or how much am I monitoring them? Like, I've noticed that in the past maybe year or so, that the relationship between me and my business partner has really become more ironed out. And for a long time, there was a lot of periods of, like, where, and me and him, I mean, we only check in maybe once every other day, maybe twice a week sometimes. And I like that, right? I like that I do my thing, he does his thing, and if we get stuck, we'll message one or the other, but we don't let getting stuck kind of hold us back. And in thinking about all that, I think that my mistake for a long time was I would do a bunch of stuff on my end, and I wouldn't, tell him what I was doing, or I wouldn't even say much about what I was doing. And then I would look at what he was doing, and I would get really frustrated, thinking like, well, what the heck is he doing? Because I wouldn't see on my end what he was doing. And I realized, looking back on that now, that, well, he was probably doing his own thing too, but I wasn't seeing the hour to hour output that he was doing in the same way that he wasn't seeing my output until we met again. And I think that, me and him would kind of clash sometimes, because I mean, I wouldn't say anything nasty, but I would say like, well, can you do this? And then I wouldn't, hear from him. And then on the flip side of it, I felt like I wished during that time that he had kind of nagged me more, because he's more of like the laid back, easygoing one in the
Ah,
relationship, and I'm more of the control freak type that you're talking about. And so from my point of view, I'm like, well, I need some of that feedback, I need some of that encouragement, and I don't see it as him getting on my case when he does that. And so just in the past, especially the past year or so, once I kind of realized that he's not my clone, he's not my opposite, it's a complementary sort of relationship, then I realized, okay, I need to back off a little bit, and I need to tell him to push me a little bit more too.
that's super interesting. I think the compliment thing, because I think it's a really subtle difference between being opposite, because I think a lot of time people think it means being opposite. It means having the same sort of direction, but that you're kind of two pieces of a puzzle that help each other along. And I think it's awesome that you were able to realize that you really want, as a partnership, you really wanted someone that challenged you a little bit, because that's working by yourself. It's hard to do that, I think.
Yeah, and I agree. And so, like, as you're kind of hearing about my situation with my business partner, I mean, do you have any advice in that area, like in that sort of case study, as far as what we should do? Like, should we look into bringing on a third person, or like, what do you think we could do, as far as like taking the better inventory, or as far as, making more money or growing the business? Like, do you have any thoughts in that respect?
I think that one of the things is, and I don't know how often you guys do this, is just more of a strategy standpoint. I don't know how often you guys check, because of the kind of business that you're in, or having a general idea that you guys are metrics, very metrics driven. But I would be curious, how often do you do a reset in terms of further out than 6 months or a year, in terms of looking at what you guys want in your partnership?
Very little, and that's a really good idea. And like, that's one of those things where I'll think about that every now and then. Like, I'll think sometimes about, like, well, because we don't really have like actual like yearly income goals. It kind of just is whatever kind of comes out of it, and then we don't think too much, like you said, about what we're going to be doing in 2 or 3 years. And it's one of those things where every now and then that thought comes into my head, but then by the time I meet with him again, then I haven't written it down or I've forgotten about it. So like that's a good idea. So we should think about more of like every now and then think about the long term type of stuff you're saying.
Yeah, back in the olden days, when I first started my career, I mean, people used to do these 5, 10 year plans, and I think it's so dynamic now that it's not that you can't have those big goals, but I don't know if you want to tie it down for 5 years from now that, I'll be doing X, Y, Z. But it is really powerful to have that little bit longer term vision out of your day to day to say, either, and it can be an income goal, it can be a personal, a life goal. Maybe there's the thing that you want to free up a half a day in your week to do something crazy that's not business related. I met with somebody last week, for example, that, you know, when we started the conversation, they were talking about wanting to sell their business, but at the end of the conversation, it wasn't they wanted to sell their business. What they really wanted is they just wanted a better balance in their life. And I'm not a big life balance person, but there's some personal things that they needed to get into their life that would allow them to keep wanting to run their business. And so thinking out a year ahead, and you can do it on a rolling basis. You can say every 12 months from now, where do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And am I doing those things to get there? Because the income goals are amazing, but I think also the program goals, the market, how being aware of what's going on in the market, all those things. And it doesn't take a big deal. It takes an hour, just an hour to blue sky what you want to do a year from now. And sometimes you start doing those things and they start showing up, and that's what's exciting.
Right, and I mean, yeah, it's kind of blowing my mind, and it's kind of getting the gears turning in that sort of respect. And yeah, so I mean, you've given a lot for me to think about, and a lot for our listeners to think about in whatever sort of situation they're in, and whatever sort of brick wall that they're hitting, or if they've always thought, well, I kind of want more. I want to grow the business. I want to bring more people on. And so as we're winding down this call, Gina, I mean, when you consult with people, or you deal with anyone who is trying to either bring on a partner or bring on a number two, or remove somewhat of themselves from the business, do you see any big mistake happening over and over with this?
Yeah, and this is an old saying, and I hate to use old things, but if you want to grow your business, what got you here won't get you there. And it may keep you where you're at, but it typically won't get you to it's a building block. So always think of as just, you build that foundation to get you to the certain point, and then now you got to build another level on your foundation. So doing it different is probably a given.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, time for some people out there to switch some gears.
Exactly.
Well, cool. And then, so if someone wants to know more about you, Gina, if they liked everything they heard today, they want the book, they want to get on your list and all that good stuff, where should they go?
Hey, they can go to tandemleadershipbook.com, and I'm more than happy. It's really important to me. I'm not about selling books. I'm more about helping people. And so I have set up a link for tandemleadershipbook.com/Robert, and any of your listeners can download and get my book. I'll email it to them directly, or if they want to get it off Amazon, it's available there as well.
Awesome. So tandemleadershipbook.com, and then the special for listeners today, tandemleadershipbook.com/Robert. So thanks so much, Gina, for coming on the show and sharing your expertise here. And I mean, you've given all of us listening a lot of things to think about. And I mean, it's one of those things that, like, I keep hearing, like, the underlying thing I'm hearing is that a lot of people, they think they know what they want, but then they need to, for example, track what they're doing. They need to think more long term to figure out what that real deeper need is to get that life satisfaction or fulfillment, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Cool. I mean, I'm just doing my best here. So thanks, Gina. So tandemleadershipbook.com. Everyone should go there right now. So I appreciate you coming on the show. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Be sure to like the Facebook fan page for The Robert Plank Show on Facebook at www.robertplankshow.com. That's ROBERTPLANKSHOW.com.